we're really, really honoured, really, really happy and stoked to have the awesome Mr. Ben Brand on this evening, the SA legend and king that is. He's going to be sharing his journey with us tonight, which we're really, really happy about. Your journey, Ben, has been pretty incredible. You have gone from 0 to 60 SA units in your first proper year of property, which is insane. It's absolutely incredible, and I know that everyone's going to be dying to ask you some questions out there on that. You recently left the military after kind of 12, 13 years worth of service, and you've now gone full-time into property. So before I pass over to you to ask you some questions, I'm going to pass it over to Steph. Over to you.
Over to me. Good evening, Ben. So in true Ride community style, my first question is always the same. Please tell us who you are, where you come from, and in one short sentence, what you do in property.
Yeah, no dramas at all. I'll try and keep it short, which I'm failing to already. But yeah, so my name's Ben Brand, and I'm based in Newport, South Wales. In one sentence, I specialise in serviced accommodation management, training, and sourcing. There you go. That's pretty much as short as I can get it.
Yeah, Ben. So tell us, kind of what you did before property.
Yeah. So my background sort of different to many, I suppose, but we all come from sort of different positions. But really, my entire working life background was in the army. So joined the army when I was 21, having done a couple of small jobs before that. And yeah, as sort of guy said, did 12 or 13 years. Main bit of my time in the army was in the intelligence corps. So yeah, for those of you that know me, I'm a bit of a geek, to be honest, hence why I was a perfect choice to sort of sit in front of a computer for sort of 9-10 years and sort of do nerdy stuff. I actually closed out my time in the military in cybersecurity. So kind of like geekiness on top of geekiness, basically. And yeah, it was a really enjoyable 12 years. I mean, to be honest, the person I went to in the army wasn't particularly motivated, and was a little bit lost in life. I think that's kind of where I was. The army definitely gave me some purpose, taught me a lot, put me in a lot of sort of interesting situations, and yeah, helped me grow. But I kind of felt, especially sort of as I got towards the kind of 10-year point, that I was kind of like perversely not really getting that challenge anymore, and I just didn't feel like I was growing. And yeah, so I started looking around for other opportunities. And it's a bit of a cliche, but I sort of started working on self-development and come across a very famous book called Rich Dad Poor Dad, which I'm sure we've all read. And that kind of like just taught some really basic principles to me. Like the biggest one was basically suspend your money on things that make money. Like as basic as that, basically, because up to that point, my squaddy mentality when it came to money was you get paid at the beginning of the month, and as long as you kind of like not completely and utterly skimp by the end of the month, you're doing all right because you're going to get paid again. And that was kind of the process. But yeah, unfortunately, many squaddies got to have that because the army or the military in general does a very good job, as you guys know, kind of like picking up the pieces, even if you do spend all the money each month. But yeah, so then I started looking around at property, sort of actually ended up going on some sort of property training and courses, and actually I settled on serviced accommodation. One of the reasons being that it kind of spoke to me. I kind of liked the fact it was automated, a lot of it was online. I thought, you know what, I'll be good at that. I just can do computers, but I kind of looked at the numbers and I thought, you know what, this kind of makes sense. It seems like something that is essentially a win-win. It just, it looks like a good opportunity because it's providing something decent to the end customer, but equally there's sort of good money to be made. And I didn't have a huge amount of cash to sort of start a business, so rent to service accommodation seemed like a pretty good strategy. So I suppose, that's kind of like where I was before I got into property, and like kind of that sort of decided my trajectory to go into service accommodation. So I hope that kind of answers your initial question.
You've answered that question before.
I guess like SA is generally seen as more of a kind of advanced strategy in property. It's often one of the things that people get into later on. Maybe they've done some buy-to-lets, an odd HMO, then they see SA and go for it. But for you, it was the first strategy that you went into in property. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, my other property experience prior to that was just buying the house I lived in. So yeah, no, agreed. I suppose some people say it is quite an advanced strategy. I mean, reality is, as I say, I always tell a lot of other people, you could sort of consider it compared to single let's a bit advanced strategy, but actually it is a relatively low money. And so I started my service accommodation business. So I had a squaddy car at the time of leaving the army, a sort of very powerful BMW that was basically a bag of bolts. I sold that for $4,000, got an interest-free credit card, and ended up driving around with a £500 banger for a few months. But essentially, I started my business on $4,000 and an interest-free credit card, and obviously I couldn't afford to have bought a single let doing that kind of thing. So it kind of going for something more advanced was a requirement as much as anything else in terms of buying. But equally, what I sort of tell people is it's more difficult, but it's not rocket science at the end of the day. There are far more complicated things people can do. You just need to learn how to do it and then work very, very hard, in my opinion. Because if you do your research, select the right area, put the work in, kind of don't take no for an answer, because a lot of people stumble at the actually getting the first handful of unit stage, because it is more difficult when you haven't got obviously a business behind you and you haven't got like the knowledge and experience. But yeah, it's not, I'm saying I'm nothing special. I was a squaddy for 12 years, so there are people out there eminently more qualified and better than me. So if I can do it, yeah, I think anyone can.
Do you think, because you're obviously in the Int Corps, and you think that kind of like your analytical brain was quite suited to that SA, setup? It's obviously, like Steph's already alluded to, it is one of the more advanced strategies, and there's a lot more, I guess, like working parts to have to consider, and there's channel managers, and
you can't just put a tenant in it and forget.
You're having to straight away kind of spin lots of different plates. And did you find that like that analytical brain helped?
Yeah, I'll be honest. I do think so, because you're entirely right. There are a lot of moving parts. I mean, service accommodation isn't just a property strategy; it's also a hospitality business. So it's not just property; it's not just hospitality. It's a blending of the two. And I think some people maybe get into SA and they kind of forget that part. That at some point you're going to have to you'll have rented the property out, or you'll have bought the property, or whatever. But you're going to have to then deal with a guest who's going to be asking you very non-property related questions half the time. Some of it which might be a bit inane. So yeah, it's a whole different beast in that regard. But yeah, the analytics, definitely. I think we kind of spent a lot of time choosing where to initially set our business up. And we kind of like looked at some more obvious places, but we actually in the end went for somewhere that didn't really have much of a existing serviced accommodation market. But we looked at sort of a lot of indicators that there was going to be demand, which is Newport, South Wales, and that's what the place I'm talking about. And yeah, we kind of found actually that, well, we set our first couple units up there. We were kind of like biting our tongue, like, is it going to work? And then suddenly we started getting bookings, and in Newport now, we've got well over 30 in different properties, and they pretty much book out week on week still. So there's clearly a lot of demand. It just wasn't being serviced before. So yeah, that was kind of helpful. And I mean, equally, I love a good spreadsheet, and I spend many times a day looking at different spreadsheets. Yeah, you need to, exactly. But I mean, Rent to SA, especially when you're sort of like working with deals and talking with investors, and that's what we do a lot of, is manage properties for investors. I need to run the numbers basically on the spreadsheet and make sure that from a desktop valuation perspective, the numbers work. So yeah, obviously it kind of helps being a bit of a nerd when it comes to finding deals that are going to work for everyone involved.
You're going to be awesome at SA then. You're a little bit of a nerd.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've got a question. Cool. So with Newport, Wales being somewhere that was relatively untouched for the SA market, the SA world, and you've penetrated it and completely taken over that space, have competitors come in as well? Have you found that other people have now you've kind of created that demand and supply? Have more competitors now kind of joined that particular market?
On your bandwagon?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's been a couple of people start up. I mean, ironically, there were some other people that kind of asked me about SA back last year when I started up, and I said Newport was a good place. A couple of them have started. Probably what I would say in all fairness is they pretty much chose to sort of not expand during lockdown. So they kind of like in the same position near enough they were last year. I think maybe what made us more unique is we actually, chose to keep going in lockdown and actually expand quite significantly. But yeah, it's an interesting question. I think I'm kind of like, in terms of a mindset, I kind of believe in abundance. And like people use the word saturation, loads of service accommodation. It's like service accommodation does not work in London. It's saturated and these kind of places. And it's like, well, it does work because there's literally loads of people doing it. So that's instantly wrong. So I think with any market, I mean, now I'm happy to pretty much enter any market that we think works based on our analysis, not on whether there are or aren't people there. And then it's a quality thing, really. As long as you're one of, if not the best people in an area, then yeah, there might be 100 units and only 10 of them are getting booked. But as long as you've got the 10 best units, then you'll get booked. So I think it's more like worry about yourself and worry less about everyone else. That's kind of like the way I think it kind of works. So yeah, we kind of go into bigger markets now, like Cardiff and Bristol. And we do all right in those markets, even though we were relatively new when we started there, and there were a lot of competitors. But I think I'd like to think our units are of a quality where, yeah, they kind of sell themselves.
Yeah.
Awesome. And you touched on it there, but I mean, it's worth saying that a lot of people really struggled this year, particularly in the SA business, didn't they? And we saw lots of businesses go under completely. So how did you manage this year, and how have you managed to excel?
Well, it's been, I'm not going to sort of pretend it's been like an amazing easy year, and it's not, we've been out of complications. And obviously when we sort of cycled all the way back to March, when the first lockdown got announced, and obviously that was kind of, I was just getting to the point now where my business was just starting to grow. I actually was still in the army at that point and like ready to make, I was very soon out. And I was like, great, I literally started this business. I've sold my poor old BMW, and now the COVID's coming in, there's going to be no more business. But I mean, I probably kind of burnt my bridges by that point. I hadn't done any job interviews. I'd only worked on my business. I'd literally given myself sort of no plan B. And so we kind of sat down and hustled and went, you know what, we are going to make this work. And I think we're lucky that we had an SA business that was primarily in a place with low supply already. So we kind of like made a bit of our own luck there, because had we been a new fish in a big city where there were more people doing it, we might have been in a different position. Yeah. But then we just went and looked for outside the box. Key workers kind of aligned quite well with our target market anyway, because we do all sorts now. But to begin with, we were like very focused on the contractor housing market, which, I mean, a lot of contractors became key workers sort of when lockdown got announced, which is pretty useful for us because we could just crack on accommodating that market. But we did other things, including approaching the council. We ended up sort of helping sort of housing the homeless people in a lot of our properties, which obviously was great because we were helping people and we were sort of covering the bills. Hosted a lot of doctors and nurses, which is sort of quite useful. Obviously, again, helping people, making all right rates. So yeah, we kind of maintained, even during the worst lockdown, about 70% occupancy. We weren't charging quite the pricing we would have done, but we were kind of paying the bills and looking after our investors. And I mean, that's probably the other one as well. So we started off doing rent to service accommodation because I went and got trained, and that's what I got taught you do. You go find a property, you rent it, you bung furniture in, bung it on Airbnb, and magic happens. But we were kind of lucky that people saw what we were doing, liked it, and actually asked us to start managing properties for them, which is a whole different business model, because suddenly, instead of us basically having to pay to take on a property, i.e. the rent, deposit, furniture, suddenly people were paying us to take the properties on and manage them for them. So they pay us to set the property up. And then we take, like a normal letting agent, we take a percentage each month. So really we had no low liability. So we basically started growing our business by using other people's money. So again, a bit of a cliche here, but we kind of like did that sort of classic investor thing. We found a way in which we could grow our business. And as long as we were looking after our investors and getting them good returns, then actually, yeah, we could basically get paid to expand. So that's kind of what flipped it on its head for us. If we kind of just sat there doing rent to rent and not really sort of tried anything else, then we wouldn't have expanded quickly at all. In fact, we might have been in a difficult position because we had a big overhead. So yeah, that's what kind of flipped it on its head for us, just doing that, because yeah, we actually made a fair chunk of money by, as I said, setting the properties up, especially when we were small. We had very few overheads, so we could make a good chunk of change every time we took a property on. And obviously, once I was on the books, we were then making money every month from the guests going there.
Is that something you set out to do, is to take on other properties and manage them, or did that just come to you and it was a good idea at the time?
Yeah, literally. I'll be honest, that one. I mean, I was aware of SA management, but it wasn't like something that was heavily sort of delved into from the people that trained me to do it. It was basically a bit of a slide, and that was it. But what I have been taught was go big on social media, which I suppose some of you that do or do not know, watch me seeing this. Pretty now, I post every now and again, and that led to some opportunities. In all fairness, because yeah, people, as I said, approached me based on sort of the stuff I've been putting on Facebook, which I hadn't even been angling for management. Genuinely hadn't crossed my mind, but they posed the idea to me, and then suddenly, yeah, I had landlords approaching me, and also deal sourcers approaching me, asking me to manage the deals they sourced. So they didn't want to manage it themselves, because obviously for them it's just deals. That's what they do. But equally, a lot of their investors are based abroad, and they don't want to be managing it either. So they have to come and find someone like me that's happy to run around and count linen and clean and hoover and mop. Or maybe not, but you get the idea. And so yeah, that's kind of like where it kind of really sort of took off, just working with landlords, but also working with deal sources who could basically bring the properties to me. And yeah, it kind of flipped itself on its head, because it went from early in the business, like, how do we find properties, to, oh crap, now we've got too many properties to set up, and we're actually having to like timetable taking these properties on, which is pretty cool.
And I guess, yeah, you kind of like started to diverse your portfolio pretty early on there. And I guess one of the benefits with the management side of SA is that you're going to get paid no matter what. Whereas I guess if it's, on a rent-to-rent basis, you've still always got, that pressure of, you don't make your target and you don't make your margin, then you're not going to have the change in your pocket, so to speak. So yeah, that's really, really clever.
Right, so you kind of already answered some of my next question. How you've managed COVID, how you've managed to scale your business during probably one of the most difficult times for hospitality that there has been in a long time, if not forever. What were the main challenges that you found from this year? Because you very much you thought outside the box, and you've created your own opportunities and your own look. But there must have still been some pretty significant challenges this year.
Yeah, no, they're absolutely. I mean, the one that probably weighs still on my conscience the most now is by and large, we've done pretty well by our investors, but not every single one's done great. I mean, some of the cities we operate have really struggled. So Cardiff, for example, it's very much a hospitality-based market. And so, there we've genuinely struggled. Sometimes they made a loss. There's no two ways around it. So that's been difficult because I just not really I just don't like failing people. I mean, ultimately it's kind of a risk and a bit of ours, but it's just my sort of end desire is to obviously look after all of our investors, and equally as well sometimes it's kind of difficult to sort of provide the full service to guests because sometimes there are restrictions with COVID as well, so we had to sort of change some of the bits we were doing. But I suppose that's probably the first main one was just probably more of a personal one, but not feeling sometimes upset with myself that we couldn't literally do well by our investors every single month, but obviously I'm hoping things will improve for them anyway going forward. I suppose reality is scaling quickly doesn't come without its challenges. An obvious one is sometimes we drop the ball. Sometimes we just take on way too much, and basically the systems that we put in place wouldn't cope with it. So we'd have that many people checking out in a day. We literally didn't have enough cleaners. Or I get quite ambitious in terms of targets for the amount of properties we take on, and our setup team absolutely hate me, to be honest, because I'm we could just do 1 or 2 more this week. I'll probably have to rein myself in a little bit. But it's just that's it really. It's probably just a balance between growth and actually then taking a bit of a pregnant pause and going, right, we need to sort of document stuff. We need to get all the systems in place. So that's probably been quite a difficult one, just sort of finding the right line between growing, but actually maintaining the quality line, because at the end of the day, that's incredibly important for the hospitality business. There have been times when we drop the balls and guests have had problems, and they've been a result of basically the fact that we've been growing so quickly. So I'll take that on as definitely another one that's been a bit of an issue this year. But I think I've learned a lot from that as well. We've made a lot of mistakes. We've probably taken on some overheads instead of in terms of employing too many staff at one point as well. So that's been something I've learned from, because we did that and then suddenly a second lockdown occurred. And that's a bit frustrating. But I suppose those are probably the 3 of the bigger issues we've had this year. Which I suppose having to deal with growing too quickly is not the worst problem to have, but actually causes a fair few problems in all fairness.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, that point definitely resonates with us, and something that we only talked about last night last week rather on the Event Live event that we did. And I think we can totally kind of empathise with that. And I think like you said, the pregnant pause. In an ideal world, we're ambitious and you want to scale and go quickly. Mm-hmm. If you don't get that pregnant pause in between deals and projects, and you never learn the mistakes that you've made on that one and redefine and make better for the next reflection. You can then making the same mistakes in a bit of a bigger chunk than you would like to. But like you said, it's not the biggest problem in the world to have. It's actually quite a nice problem to have.
Out of interest, what's the most amount of properties you've took on in 1 week before?
It's a good question. In a week, well, I think at the moment we normally right now we've got 6 properties we're setting up concurrently. I've probably had that up to probably in and around double digits at one point. But we don't talk about that because I get in trouble.
So do you have a maximum now that you're allowed to go through in a week? There's a cap to how many deals you're allowed to take on.
We have it all timetabled. I think what we have found, and sort of because we've had a bit of a time recently to kind of adjust, and I've been I think last month I kind of did a couple of slower weeks, is actually we've become more the set. So we got different teams in the business now, and we got the people that take the properties on is called the setup team. And actually they've been able to implement, because I gave them a bit of a break, they were able to implement a load of stuff that's made them more efficient. So we can literally do near enough, it feels like twice the amount now with the same amount of people. So for example, now we buy the majority of the stuff we put in the property in bulk now. So it's not a case of going and buying bespoke. They go to our industrial unit where all our stuff is held, and now they can just load up the van and get most of the stuff in one go. So little things like that, which just by giving them a bit of time to go, wait a minute, what can we do to speed up is actually really going to pay off in the long run. But I suppose it's kind of ultimately down to me. We've got some sort of bigger deals coming through at the moment. So some of the bigger deals we've got going through are double digits already. So we'll do our best as we can with them, obviously, when they come in. But yeah, obviously, as required, we'll have to take more people on to kind of deal with it.
Right, okay, we've got a question from Lenka. We'll just ask a quick one. Can I ask, please, when it comes to contractors, I am just working on my first essay and wondering, so it's a bit of a long one, would you get it and then contact building companies or contact them prior to getting the property? I have experience in running 25 essays and could use this as a proof of my work. Is there anything you would recommend me to do at this stage, please? Can I read that out? Did you get that?
Saying,
yeah, no, I get it. It's I might rephrase the question if I might, because I'm probably answering a bigger question if I do. How do you get direct bookings? Is probably the ultimate question from that. And it's really good. It's like the ultimate question in SA. It's like, how do I get the holy grail, which is direct bookings? A swear word, Booking.com and Airbnb. I want to keep the 15%. Now, Booking.com and Airbnb, as examples, have a bit of a stigma. If people want to know, in my humble opinion, the most leveraged way to get direct bookings, it's not to work against these platforms, it's to work with them. So the most leveraged way you'll get bookings is by actually targeting the guests you're getting off these platforms, especially for people starting in serviced accommodation. These platforms, in my opinion, will be the places where you get your initial traction. If you don't have in your sort of heart of hearts, whatever scale you're at doing SA, if you can't say, yeah, hand on heart, and every opportunity possible, I am telling that guest I've got off that platform that, wait a minute, if you come book direct on my website, which is heavily optimized and awesome, by the way, that's what you need to have. If you're not telling them, look, book direct next time, 10% discount, we'll give you discounts for extended stays. What you're doing, sort of contacting them by phone 5 or 6 times during the stay and saying, are you coming back, yada, yada, yada. If you do that retargeting, you'll get more decent direct bookings and sort of people in your phone book in terms of repeat customers than anything else you can do. And I know that's not the sort of preferred answer, because some people will say, oh, just ring this number here and you'll get straight through and talk to their sort of accommodation person and that sort it out. You can do the cold calling. I've done a lot of it. I didn't find it particularly leveraged, whereas a lot of our long-term bookings now, we've initially picked up through the platforms. They've been coming down for 5 days. They know the score. They'll find an operator, and then they'll hopefully be able to sort of book further going forward. But a lot of that is having direct booking mentality, engaging with your guests, and not sort of treating it as a, here's your lockbox code, enjoy, please leave a good review, see you later. Actually kind of really getting to know what they're doing in the area. And then, having a really slick, good direct booking website, because again, I know a lot of people ask me, how do I get direct bookings, etc. And then I sort of look at their website and it's just, they might not even be able to be physically capable of taking bookings online automatically. So it's all good and well being able to do a bank transfer. But if people can't get quite a seamless click on the property, credit card number in, property booked kind of experience, then you're kind of not opening yourself up to that. So, sorry, I probably got a link around in a bit of a weird way and answered your question, but I think that's sort of a bigger piece. So, I think you should, for me, it's not a case of you need to have like 1,000 bookings lined up before you take a property on. If you've done your research beforehand and you've seen that there's a decent demand in the area, then you don't have to have like a booking in place before you consider taking a property on. In my opinion, you should be confident that the property is going to sell, take it on and market it using the platforms initially.
Yeah.
Look, there are others. Airbnb and Booking.com are the big ones, but there are others.
Yeah. Question I've got actually that sort of falls out of that is, when you first get your property, say it's your first SA property, you obviously want to get those reviews, and people say, the first ones are always fake, they're always family members. How do you get those first reviews and how do you get them good so that it brings everybody else in?
Yeah, it's a really good one. I mean, a lot of people say, just get your family and friends. So I'll be honest, probably I'm not even like that. I don't necessarily think that's a bad idea. We just never really had a time to put it into practice. Honest answer, I probably should have done it at some point. And I've had like people offering like, oh, they just obviously want to stay for free for the night. But one thing led to another. COVID happened and I forgot all about it. So there you go. You're more likely to get reviews if you ask for them, or you're more likely, should I say, to get good reviews if you ask for them. Whereas if you muck up, then you're likely to get bad. People will happily leave bad reviews. So again, it's the same as the direct booking mentality. I think we probably send 2 automated messages asking for reviews to every single guest who stays with us, regardless of the platform. And on top of that, my team will call them the day before checkout just to see if everything's okay, remind them to leave a review, and then on the day of checkout for exactly the same thing. So we'll hit them 4 times asking for reviews. We've considered doing like incentive things, like maybe giving them a coupon or something if they leave a review. But I mean, that's kind of what I would say, ask for reviews. But then actually, again, another level above that, and it's kind of like the more important thing, give them a good experience, give good service. I mean, it sounds so ridiculously simple, but if you're like if you're more worried about getting good reviews and providing a good service, then I'd say that you're kind of worrying about the wrong thing, because the good reviews will come if you do the right thing.
Is it my question next then?
I think it's you.
Okay. Well, I guess it's bringing it back to COVID again. Sort of not COVID, but the sort of situation in the UK at the minute. There's a lot of uncertainty next year with things like Brexit. Is now a good time to get into the business?
You're probably asking someone who's a little bit biased on the subject, only because I've managed to build a business during it. But equally, I suppose you could take that as proof. I'm not going to say it's the easiest time by any means, and in fact, it's not. But I've always been a bit of a contrarian investor. I'm definitely sort of now. And the reality is, if most people are thinking it's not a good time, that might, if you sort of find the right niche, and I'm a big believer in sort of going into a niche, you can find the opportunity. So we don't know what's going to happen next year. I've got my opinions. I've literally was paid for 9 years to make assessments based on very little information. So I'll happily make one, but I'll kind of I don't want to ramble on too long. But let's just say something's going to happen next year at some point. But one of the sort of things I had in my mind during the deepest, darkest days of this year, and I think you kind of already said it, Lucy, is things can't really get much worse. I mean, during the middle of the first lockdown, literally, you go out onto the streets and it was something like out of an apocalypse movie where there's just no one else about, and it's like, what is going on? Literally couldn't have got much worse for SA then, regardless. And so what I was thinking is, look, if it can't get much worse, at some point it's going to get better. My broad opinion is things will improve next year. And what I also think this pandemic's done is, in the long term, in a weird way, benefited SA. Obviously, terrible consequences overall, but specifically for SA, it's probably shifted people more towards wanting self-contained, isolated accommodation. A bigger sector of the market will now want that, as opposed to going to hotels with communal rooms. Plus, a lot of hotels have got out the market. I mean, was it Premier Inn got rid of 6,000 staff only a couple of months ago? Mercure's slashing jobs. I mean, the hospitality sector has taken an absolute hit. If things improve next year, and let's all hope they do, people are going to want to go out and enjoy life again. There's going to be less hotels to compete with. There's going to be a lot less SA operators because, as you say, some have got out the game, and a lot less people right now would even consider SA as a strategy. So if you can get yourself positioned, not just with 1 or 2 units, I say actually with a decent sized business, so that when the market suddenly comes back, you're there. There's huge demand, very little supply. You're going to be able to make quite a decent amount of money, and then you're also going to be positioned to scale quite quickly because you won't have a lot of competitors. So it's like the sort of, again, like the standard things. A lot more people kind of more millionaires are made during a recession than sort of the other way around. And I think, again, if you kind of maybe look at service accommodation like that, you think if you can set the business model up right, if you can do it in a way which is COVID resistant, and dare I say it, you go after the kind of business market, which is kind of like what we started off doing, when I say contractors and whatnot, then you put yourself in a position and you set yourself up for success as and when things improve. And probably the other thing I would say in that is, when I say we got contractor houses, you might have images of dingy 2-bed terraces with sort of furniture we found on Facebook, and maybe some damp here, there, and everywhere. We actually, that's not the way we operate at all. Our favourite property type are 3 to 4 bedroom, nice standard, semi-detached or detached family houses in quite affluent areas of towns on the outskirts. That's literally, so I personally, as we said, we do a lot of management, but I also have my own rent-to-rents. My rent-to-rents broadly are all, the smallest one's 5 bedroom. They're all big houses, loads of bathrooms and bedrooms. They're all basically like executive houses plus. And I've just found that's a really good pinch point where, because they're so big, you can get quite a few contractors in. It's quite opulent because it is a nice part of town. They've got their own parking, etc. They tend to be quite close to the motorway, so they get good links. But on the flip side, because they're really nice big houses, they're great for people, hospitality clients, because they're actually just genuinely, and it's a nice product. It's not hard to sell because these are sort of like £300,000-400,000 houses. So that you're essentially covering a lot of bases. So yeah, I say anyone looking to get into SA, if you can do properties that cater to as many markets as possible, and also kind of like will work if they have to for just the basic key worker contractor market, then you're putting yourself in a position where hopefully you can probably ride out any more storms should they come.
Yeah, totally.
So I've got a question here, Ben, from Naomi Bryant. It's a question from Naomi. What doesn't generally work, contractors, please? 3 bedroom, only 1 bathroom, a location where you have to drive to pubs/shops. So what doesn't generally work for contractors, please?
Yeah, well, I kind of hit it a little bit already. I think what we found is they're going to have a vehicle. So actually being in the city centre, if anything, being in city centre is a negative because parking's probably more difficult. So having a property with its own dedicated parking is great because, again, they're probably going to have tools in the vehicle, etc. So even though it might literally be just a geographical distance of like 2 meters, not being on the curb versus being on your little bit of tarmac makes them feel more secure about the vehicle. Yeah, it's an interesting point about the pubs and stuff. I'll be honest, we don't choose the properties based on is it like sprawling distance away from a pub. That's not normally something we consider, but we will obviously kind of give directions and stuff and shops. But no, it's mostly just, is the rate competitive? Because these people are going to be budget conscious. So you've got to make sure your numbers work. Just as an example, I know that in like Newport, the going rate for a contractor is £30 per person per room. And broadly speaking, the contractors don't like to share rooms. So that makes it really easy. When I'm doing my kind of price analysis, if it's 4-bed house, okay, so I've got a base price there of 120 a night. I can then look how that perform at 50% occupancy and 75% occupancy, run my numbers, does that sort of work? Because I know that that's what the contractors will work to. So yeah, the bathroom question is, again, really good one. Yeah, I don't like the idea of like packing people into a house and lots of people sharing a bathroom. I just think that's just not, again, a good service to provide. So for a 3-bedroom house, even a 3-bedder, I'd really kind of want at least 1.5 bathrooms. When I say 1.5, you know what I mean, sort of WC downstairs. But 2's optimal. But that's why actually I prefer going for a house that will typically have an ensuite, so 4 or 5 bed kind of executive house, because then actually suddenly it brings the sort of bathrooms to people ratio back down again. So we've got some 3-bedders with single bathrooms, but we'll only offer them out to sort of, well, not, we won't literally try and pack them in bunk beds and stuff. We'll kind of keep the numbers down. Because again, what I found, and this was even pre-COVID, I got trained that potentially you get away with putting loads of twin beds in the bedrooms, and they'd all share and have a lovely time. But I found more broadly speaking, to be honest, for the longest days, they want their own room, which is fair enough. So then really, I've always run my numbers based on 1 person per room. Anything else is a bonus.
Yeah, okay.
Another great bit of advice there.
Yeah, totally. I guess just leading on from that, with each of your properties in your portfolio, do you have a very specific guest avatar that you're kind of catering it for, or would you try and maybe span a couple of different? Do some of your properties, do you cater for the kind of tourists and also the contractors at the same time? Does that work?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the short answer is we pretty much cover all bases now. So we got some trophy properties, like some sort of swanky penthouses, which the numbers are never going to work for for contractors, but will do for sort of hen do's and stag do's, or people that want a bit of an opulent place to stay. I'd say, yeah, we don't have anything that wouldn't cater for hospitality, in my opinion. We just don't have a bar that low. That's what we've learned now. We've got a couple of properties that may be borderline, but they still weirdly do very well for hospitality. But we don't have many of your traditional terraces. And the ones we do are absolutely they might not look great on the outside, but they're palaces on the inside. So we'll never have stuff that's just contract specific. In short, we will always have something that at minimum is going to appeal to hospitality, contractors, and corporate. So I think I said it before, we kind of cover all bases. But yeah, we do have some swanky stuff that contractors aren't going to be able to afford, which are kind of cool because there's a different market. Obviously, they're not massive money makers at the moment, but I've got a handful of them just kind of hedging my bets because next year I reckon they'll do very well.
Hashtag staycation.
Yeah, staycation all round.
Staycation.
I guess the holy grail for every single property investor, entrepreneur is having it passive. Is that even articulated? Totally. But yeah, being as passive as possible. And again, from our experience, I guess, in the HMO world, certainly in the beginning, it's definitely nothing. It's not passive at all. And yes, we've spent a lot of time to create our systems and automations to hopefully get it to a point where it will be eventually. So, I mean, yeah, I guess at the same kind of level in the SA world, would you say it's more or less, or, how passive is SA?
It's a great question, and I think what makes it even more great is there's sort of some people think SA it gets sold. I definitely got sold the dream a little bit to begin in the back in the day. Oh, smartphone, beach, SA business done, easy as that. And yeah, in all fairness, it does work like that. So I work with a load of investors now who invest in my business, and they literally they'll Zoom me from a beach, and we'll have muggins here running around South Wales worrying about their property. Literally doing that. And so if you're an investor and you've got money to sort of put into service accommodation, then yeah, it can actually be incredibly passive and you can make really good money. Depending on your manager and market conditions, etc. But it can be particularly passive. When it comes to doing your own SA business, however, yeah, it's an incredibly large amount of work. I mean, realistically, I've not really had a day off since we started over a year ago, properly. I find it very hard to sort of unwind anyway. But this year, I haven't had a proper holiday. Weekends I work, but I enjoy it. So I don't I'm not saying that to get my violin out. I actually enjoy it because I'm a bit weird. So that's fine. But it's incredibly hard work. And to give you some sort of idea now, we're at 70 units, and in our business, we've got about 15 full-time staff and about another 15 to 20 part-time staff to sort of make up the majority of our housekeeping team. And that's how much work in terms of people doing stuff is required. So when you talk about a passive system, no, you need a lot of people on board. And we do a lot of automation. And trust me, I think we do relatively well at that because that's kind of like one of my strengths in the business. But yeah, that's what I could say now is, I mean, I get to sort of sit on here. I do a lot of work now, but I sort of work on other businesses, like more than my main business. And to be honest now, if I wanted to, I could go away for weeks, if not months at a time. And actually, I've got my SA business to the point where it does run itself. It's not perfect by any means. It definitely needs more tweaking. And as we continue to build it, there will be more problems coming forward. But yeah, it can be done. In my opinion, if you want a passive SA business, you kind of want that as your holy grail. Potentially, if you work your guts out, you could actually build a business to a point in a year where actually I wouldn't say you have no involvement, but you can be more strategic. I know you won't be the one. So, for example, now I don't really deal with guests. They don't call me anymore. I mean, if they do, I get really angry. Like, how do they get my phone number? Because it'll be like sat on some booking platform somewhere. I'll be like, you're checking into where? No idea. Sorry. So I'm rubbish with the guests now. I don't go and fix leaky taps. I definitely don't do any cleaning. I very much just look at the deals now and I just work on building the business. So for me, I suppose that is kind of, that's the end state I kind of enjoy now, as I used to work on the business. Again, bit of a cliche, but on, not in the business. So that's eminently doable, and I did it in a year. So anyone else could do that. But equally, to begin with, you want to keep your overheads down, so you can't just start the business up and hire 10 people straight away, potentially, because you're not going to be making money, put it that way. So that's something you can build towards. But yeah, you need the right people in place. Yeah, people is key. I mean, we know we sort of military backgrounds, both sides. We know that getting the right people in place can make a difference, and getting people that are better than you. And for example, now we have a lovely lady who runs our bookings team. Automating where you can do a lot of automation with SA. And finally, elimination. There are certain things and certain aspects of the business and sort of certain business decisions, etc., that we've actually cut off. We've taken on a few properties sort of in our time that weren't actually at our quality line. We realised that was a bit of a mistake. We've actually managed to get rid of them. So that's helped as well, because we pretty much weeded out some of the problem properties by, getting rid. So yeah, I know that's probably the principles that I would apply to get there. But yeah, it can be passive once you've built to quite a big size and got the right people running it for you.
Did you find it difficult then to, I don't know, like not get out your own way, but to trust those people, that you were putting in those kind of key roles, new business, you developed it from the ground up. Have you had to kiss lots of frogs to get to the position that you're at now with your team, that power team? And did you find it difficult? Because from personal experience, I have found it difficult in certain areas. But ultimately, if you ever want something to be passive and you ever want to be able to take a holiday and have 2 weeks off and have your phone and be on a beach, then ultimately we need to be able to do that. But yeah, just interested how you found that.
Yeah. Well, I'll give you some context here. So I will put my hands up here. And during my time in the military, pretty much my time prior to like the last year, I kind of had this grumpy voice in the back of my head saying, you're the best at everything. As in, like, when there's a job to do, you're the best person to do it. And I kind of had that in the army. I would consider myself quite good at most jobs I was given in the military. I would consider myself to be pretty decent at them because I work very hard. But I always had that kind of chip on my shoulder as a result, and clearly we all know that's not scalable. So fortunately, by starting to read the right books, speak to the right people, I started to see that actually that's not the right kind of way to look at it. And I suppose what I've kind of done to kind of flip that on its head now is I really enjoy building teams, and I know people aren't going to do things the way you want, and there are going to be problems, but I kind of view that. And again, this isn't me getting my little violin out here, but I ultimately view anything that goes wrong in the business ultimately as my fault, because it's my business. If somebody mucks up, though it might clearly be them doing something that just seems not a very clever idea, we'll use that phrase. Ultimately, potentially I haven't given enough training, or maybe I've got the wrong person on board. There's a load of reasons where ultimately, in my opinion, it falls back to me. So I've just kind of like rejigged my mindset on it, that actually I want to get people in. I want to get them doing the best job possible. There are definitely people out there that are better than any other part of the business than me. I mean, my ambition next year is to get a managing director in my business to replace myself completely. So I'm looking forward to the day I actually sack myself. So I'm going to not handing my resignation out, but I'm actually physically sack myself next year and getting a managing director who will run my serviced accommodation business better than me. Because there's definitely many people out there that are better, way more experience. But yeah, in the meantime, obviously, I want to work on the business, get the right people in, just give them the best resources I can. Because equally, the sort of sense of satisfaction I've had when actually, there's been certain times in the business where I'll give you a bit of context. Back in the day, I used to be involved in setting the first handful of properties. I was there drilling slats into beds and putting art on the wall that I'd chosen that was rubbish.
Doing it.
Yeah, literally, I've got no taste at all, obviously. But then suddenly I got the right people in the team. We've got interior designers, we've got people that sort of set them up and make them look a lot better. And it got to a point suddenly where I wasn't ever visiting the properties anymore. And when I did, I was just going to a property that like magically turned into SA, and I'd actually never been. And that was genuinely a really nice feeling to realise that now, week on week, that stuff's happening. And they don't even let me out of the house much anymore. I'm kind of strapped to this computer, but there is an SA business out there, according to the internet, kind of building around me, which is actually a really nice feeling.
Just one thing that you touched on before, and just wanted to hone in on a bit, was you had a couple of deals that you broke off, actually, you said. And I think it's really easy from the outside looking at someone who's been quite successful to think everything's just gone swimmingly. It's just been very easy for that person. Maybe not. I don't think it in that respect, but they think that you've just had success after success. But you touched on a few deals that actually weren't, making money that you hoped for, and you broke them off. And where did you kind of, what was that kind of decision point of where you thought, well, actually, this is not working for me now. I need to get rid of this. Was there any feelings of failure around that, or was it just, this isn't working, let's move on and find the next success?
Yeah, well, I say 100%. I've made what I would consider loads of mistakes this year. And I mean, I went and I paid a lot of money and got very well educated. So I think I avoided making a lot of mistakes doing that, but equally still made an absolute metric ton, in all fairness, which I've learned a lot from. Some of them have been a very expensive lesson. Some of them have been quite embarrassing, etc. Kind of as they are, but they all definitely helped sort of us to grow, and we kind of got through them. In terms of properties, yeah, I've gone and done viewings and been just a little bit blasé, oh, look at me, unit here, unit there, and I've just not done the due diligence, looked at property, and we've suddenly discovered it's got damp or something. And again, the guests aren't going to stand for that, and I should have spotted that anyway. So yeah, we've then obviously cut that off. I mean, I want to go back to the elimination principle. Some of them have been properties, some of them have, dare I say, been investors. So we've had some investors we work with who've just caused us ridiculous problems, just more hassle than they're worth. And probably more importantly, their ethos hasn't aligned with us. I think ultimately in SA, if you kind of have this priority order where the guests come first, pretty much regardless, then the investors, and then yourself. If you kind of try and make every decision based on those principles, you can't go far wrong. But equally, we want to work with investors that kind of realise, again, that's the order of things. Like they might be number two, but they're not number one. Because if they provide the right experience for the guest, and they don't just look at it as a investment on the stock market that goes up and goes down, they realise at the end of the day, there's people staying in these properties, and if the property's a load of rubbish and the furniture's not any good, and etc., then it's not the way it should be, because it's hospitality. It's not just an investment. So, yeah, no, I would say sense of disappointment and failure. It's I made a few decisions. We've taken on a couple of NAF properties, but equally we've identified, we got feedback from the guests, or we just realised in our heart of hearts they're not the ones, and we just managed to walk away. And I think now, genuinely hand on heart, we haven't got anything that we manage or rent that I wouldn't be happy to stay in, and I don't think it's good value for money. And I mean, that's kind of it. That's kind of the sales pitch for SA, in my opinion, is basically that we offer something that's great value and great quality. As long as you kind of follow those two mantras, I think you can't go far wrong.
Yeah. Awesome. I think you know.
That was it. Yeah. Okay, so I personally, I feel like I've kind of watched your journey probably since the beginning, over the last kind of 12, to 15 months or so. And your branding always kind of struck me from the very, very beginning as being super slick, super professional. You just kind of had it in bucket loads.
That's very kind of you to say so. I don't know about the professional bit, but thank you. I appreciate the sentiment.
Certainly in the beginning, when we were kind of just starting out, I used to hang off every single word, and your setups, everything, and your screens, and just the way that you put yourself forward. More importantly, your branding just seemed to stay consistent, on point, and just aligned with you. And I just felt that came across really naturally, and it was just very inspiring. How have you found that your brand has evolved over the last year? I mean, even just recently, something that I picked up on is you've got some super slick professional photos done. Your content it's getting out there it's just kind of stepping up, and I've definitely noticed that. But yeah, I mean, what's your kind of take on your brand over the year?
Yeah, thank you. It's very kind of you, all the nice things you said. Firstly, so I got some very good advice when I did my property training. A lot of that was put yourself out there, and they tell you post on Facebook and do a bit of stuff. And I kind of took that to heart and started like hammering Facebook is probably the right word. And I've tried to sort of keep that up. I'm not in the position now where I can sustain the kind of momentum we've got. So I'm quite early on, not anywhere near as early as I should have done, but relatively early on, we got a virtual assistant to start doing our social media. We've now got 2, and I'm considering hiring a 3rd one, because at the end of the day, marketing is key for any business. It's not just unique to SA. And I probably market the business more for potential investors as well as for guests and stuff. So there's loads of ways and things you should be marketing for. And yeah, I've got quite a good surname to talk about brand, in all fairness, which somebody actually asked me the other day, did you get your name changed purely for that purpose? They were being completely honest. They must have assumed my wife got a surname change as well. Yeah, but anyway, that's by the by. But, what I would say to anyone that's sort of going down that route is I didn't ever really start off doing the social media just from the perspective of marketing. It was more just, whenever I did a post, it was more telling the story. And I think that's probably the most compelling thing you can do on social media. And the best way to sell yourself is not to even try and actively sell yourself. It's just literally, I'm doing property. This is what I'm doing. This is how my day has been. Transparency and honesty. And that will sell 1,000 times better than you just trying to weave in a subtle pitch. And like, I go, now, investors, please come to me now. It's doesn't work, because people want authenticity. And if you're doing the right thing and you're sort of showing it to people, then that's good enough. So yeah, I have obviously sort of I'm more active now and thinking about how we're marketing the business, and we're doing bits, and we obviously have strategies, and we do ads, and we do all sorts of stuff. And yeah, it is absolutely massive and imperative, because we're in a position now where for very little to no money, you can market yourself on social media and get a really sort of good sort of awareness from people and sort of network with the right people. I mean, it couldn't even be more pertinent now than ever, literally a year when the government's doing their very, very best, for good reason, to try and keep us all apart. The best way to network now is online, and the leverage you get compared to even before then, standing up at a property event network meeting for your 30 seconds and trying to sort of tell people who you are and try and get something out of them, compared to now, where if you do the right thing and you have a bit of a strategy and appreciation for social media, you can get yourself out there to loads of people. But what I would say is a lot of people have a bit of a psychological block a bit of a fear rather, of actually doing social media. I mean, some people, myself included, you care what people think, and you sort of like, I imagine people would, I do it, I still do, but you watch back your video and go, oh, he's going, I'm going, oh, my eyes are all over the place, and you like literally get inside your own head. And what you don't realize is every single other person watching you on social media is just seeing a person talking. That's it. That's just all it is. That's the way that you watch every other person is how everyone's watching you, but we, for some reason, can never watch ourselves that way. So I suppose a little bit now, as I kind of got out, I try not to care too much anymore. That's a huge part of it. In terms of sort of quantity, I think it's Grant Cardone who says if people aren't complaining about how much you post, you aren't posting enough. So yeah, we're going to keep ramping up the sort of quantity, but obviously you've got to provide quality as well. And I've got a sort of my own Facebook group and sort of do bits, but I try and actually add value. I sort of try and teach people useful stuff sort of through Facebook, and then as a result, kind of like we get good conversations and actually positive things come my way. So I don't know, it's a bit of a ramble of an answer to that, but I hope I might have answered your question at some point then.
Really pragmatic advice there, thank you. My next question, it was going to be, what is your top 3 tips for someone starting out in SA, but we're running a little bit low on time, so I'm going to say, what's your top 1 tip for anyone thinking of starting out in SA?
I'm going to do 2, but very quickly, sorry. Education and work very hard. Done.
Sorry, too quick.
So too quick. Education, you do need to learn, in my opinion. There are a lot of great free resources out there, podcasts or nearly free books, etc. So you want to try and learn as much as possible off people. But you also got to work incredibly hard. This isn't a set and forget passive strategy. That's it. At the end of the day, if you can't do SA without a lot of work, taking a lot of no's, etc. So yeah, sorry, I can't do it in one. It's got to be those 2, because otherwise I'm doing a disservice.
That goes for quite a few property strategies actually. It's certainly the same for rent to rent. I definitely agree with that. You need your education, but then you've got to actually put it into action, and that's just not going to happen on its own, is it? So you sort of alluded then before to other things that you're doing right now. So I guess my question is, what else are you doing other than you're working on your SA business right now? Yeah,
well, I obviously enjoy upsetting my wife because, instead of just having an SA business, which takes up all my time, I thought currently I also now have a Serviced Accommodation training company, so called the SA Club, which is kind of training, but also a community, relatively new, but currently I'm sort of coaching in that. So I've got 6 awesome coaching clients, which I sort of work with on a one-to-one basis. And we also kind of run training courses. So once a month, we do a sort of 2-day course online where I teach people what I've learned over the last year. So mean, that's really good fun. It's not the main thing for me. I mean, it's not my ambition to suddenly stop doing SA or kind of wind it down and just go into education, but it's definitely something I enjoy doing as well, because I think it complements it, to be honest. And the other thing that's sort of even more recently we've started and just suddenly really started with a bang is we're now actively sourcing as well. So we're sourcing serviced accommodation, either rental or purchase. My favourite being buy, refurbish, refinance to SA. And we're working with an investor pool now to basically sort of help them get into serviced accommodation and get great returns. And yeah, I'm loving that. It's really cool. I sort of love doing the deals and finding the opportunities. And yeah, we've sort of had some really good opportunities come straight away. So that's cool, because we can now, I've always been a fan of trying to do everything in-house. And now we can pretty much offer a one-stop shop where we find people the deals all the way through to managing it for them and everything in the middle. So yeah, those are sort of the two other things I'm kind of working on now, which is kind of, yeah, which I really enjoy.
And yeah, anyone that's not already in the SA Club Facebook group that Ben runs, definitely get yourself over there. The links in the banner going across, but totally go and check that out. And actually, you know, from a personal kind of recommend, you know, we had half an hour. You very kindly gave up. Well, it was more like an hour actually that you gave up for us a couple of weeks ago, and we're just about to venture into our first dip of the toe into the SA world, so to speak. And yeah, you know, the advice that you gave us was valuable. So, and I know that you put a lot of free content out on that group. So anyone that's interested in SA, or you know, you've got 50 essays, and I would definitely go and get yourself in that community. Yeah, right now, do it right now. Okay, so, yeah, so Steph kind of you just mentioned then, other things that are going on now. So I guess the natural kind of progression on from that, and the last question that we'll put to you, Ben, is what is next for Ben Brand and the SA Club? What does 2021 hold for you?
Yeah, well, yeah, I've got a lot of. I'm going to be honest. I've got quite ambitious targets. I'll try.
Do you know what that
in order? So service. Well, let's say I'll do them in order. So service accommodation business, we're currently on 70 units. I want to, by the end of next year, be on well over 200, like just in terms of sort of units under management throughout the UK. The SA Club, I want to be doing not just virtual events, obviously at the moment, but I want to be doing regular events. And then, yeah, in terms of sourcing, it kind of feeds into what the other stuff I want to do. But I love big projects and the idea of doing apartment hotels and big blocks. And yeah, I kind of want to do, as part of the deal sourcing, do some really good joint ventures with people we're already working with, and hopefully new people, and kind of work on real big apartment hotels throughout the UK. I mean, yeah, I want StayBC and what we do to be a UK and beyond business. And I think, like, especially with apartment hotels, there's a lot of scope for it. So yeah, a lot of growth hopefully for next year.
Amazing. What does BC stand for? Or is that really obvious?
Oh, really good question. No, that's really good. So stay, obviously, you can stay with us. But the B stands for Ben and the C stands for Chris. Chris being my business partner, who's almost a bit of the silent partner in the relationship. He has started doing Facebook Lives with me literally the last couple of weeks, but he's been like the kind of quiet, silent partner up until now. You obviously see far too much of me, but he's going to be doing a lot more, which is good. So, yeah.
Well, if Chris is anything like Steph, keep her off the Facebook Live. Absolutely love them.
They're all good, aren't they?
Awesome. No, Ben, thank you so much for tonight. Like, it's been just short of 1 hour of absolute, gold value for us, and hopefully for everyone that's listening as well. Your ambition, your drive, is just inspiring, really. And certainly you're in a place where we would really like to, aspire to be at some point. I don't know if we'd ever get there, but we've got very similar backgrounds, being in the military, and we kind of hang off every one of your words, really. So thank you so much for tonight. We will be watching what happens next year very closely. But yeah, appreciate you coming on board.
But yeah, take care, everybody, and remember, whatever you do, enjoy the ride.